I'm in the French Quarter in the heart of New Orleans. I'm on the corner of Dauphin and St. Philip, and behind me there's a small corner store. There's a kind of corner store where you can buy your sandwiches, you can buy your drinks, milk, your frozen foods. Hundreds of thousands of people a year come and buy their groceries here. Most of them probably don't even realise that the man who owns it was one of the most important key personalities within the birth of rock and roll right here in New Orleans. Cosimo Matassa, who started the very first recording studio here, J&M Recordings, who recorded Tutti Frutti or the Little Richard songs and Fats Domino. He's there. So we're going to have a chat with him and find out more about the birth of rock and roll here in New Orleans. Now for the music. 1949, the Fat Man, Fats Domino and Dave Bartholomew.
Yeah.
Most people kind of recognise that was probably the defining backbeating rock and roll arriving about then.
Oh yeah.
What was that session like? Did you kind of know that something different was happening then?
Nah, not really, because what we were doing was what we were doing, so to speak. It's what was happening in and around New Orleans, and he was as much a part of it as anybody, maybe a little more. And Dave Bartholomew was in charge, and we did it. I mean, and didn't have at the time any sense of history. You got to understand, when we did that, we didn't think that, 30 years later or 50 years later, people say, "Oh, how wonderful it was." Well, come on, we didn't even think they'd remember it.
But it was obviously the backbeat, the 2 and the 4, Earl Palmer.
Yeah.
Was that
well, you said the magic word.
Earl Palmer.
He was the key to it. He played on any important session that didn't have a integral band with its own drummer. It was almost sure to be Earl Palmer until he left and went to the West Coast, because he couldn't stand the integration problems we had here in New Orleans. And at the time he had a white girlfriend, so the studio was one of the few places he could be comfortable with, without somebody looking over his shoulder saying, oh, you can't do that.
Right.
So he went to the West Coast. But fantastic. Till the day he died, the greatest drummer in the country. I don't care what anybody says.
And was that something at the time that people were playing in the clubs? Was that movement about? But
sure.
It was just that you captured it first.
It was contemporary.
Right.
I just happened to be here at that time in this place. But no, it was what guys were doing, and it felt good. People liked it. New Orleans and this area were economically poor, so people didn't so much go to clubs and sit back and spend a lot of money and say, entertain me. They went to clubs to dance and entertain themselves. It was cheaper, better,
right?
Literally, and so that's what the situation was around.
Now, New Orleans is famous for the New Orleans sound, which is something that's almost indefinable.
Yeah, well, it's a euphemism.
Yeah.
Literally, it's what everybody around here was playing. Call it what you like. It's what at the time was the dominant thing. And because, like I say again, people did a lot of dancing down here, rhythm was amen number one. In fact, think of it. And we did a lot of partying down here. People, private parties, the Saturday night fish fry kind of thing. And if you didn't play well, they didn't get you back next week, so to speak. So they sort of filtered out all the bad guys. What was left was a whole bunch of good guys.